filming this a little bit later, but today at Tamworth Castle we were doing some stuff, some writing to make things a bit more spooky. Want to see how we did?
Have you ever been brushed by a ghost or haunted by spirits who live on past the death of a tortured soul? Have you ever been spooked by a spectre in a chilly dark churchyard? Or heard the moans of the ghouls trapped in the tombs below? Have you seen a wraith appear on a lofty staircase? Or have you been lost in the fog when a phantom passed by? Do not be afraid. These are just apparitions creeping out of the shadows of your mind.
At first sight, there was nothing unusual about this winter's night in Tamworth. Outside the bars and clubs, there was a steady stream of young girls in short dresses and young men attired in tight-fitting short-sleeved shirts, and not a coat to be seen, despite the plummeting temperature. The clouds of the earlier part of the day had given way to a crystal-clear night, with the moon shining bright in the nighttime sky, as though it was casting a spotlight exclusively on the town centre. The only haziness in the clearest of nights came from the vapour trails of e-cigarettes, from those slowly puffing away as they progressed inch by inch towards the entrances of Tamworth's nighttime venues. However, outside Tamworth Castle, halfway up Holloway, and away from the hubbub of Tamworth's nocturnal revellers, stood a lonely figure, who by the silhouette was easily distinguishable as a woman. This would not be usually noteworthy if it were not for her dress. She appeared most elegant, wearing a flamboyant evening dress, and it was too early in the year for a Christmas party. What was more striking, though, was that her hat was adorned with large flowers, which caused it to tilt, thus obscuring most of her facial features. As she moved up the hill towards Market Street, a taxi approached. With a sense of urgency, the lady withdrew a handkerchief from her cuff, waved it vigorously in the air, thus summoning the taxi to pull over. Once in the taxi, she gave the driver her instructions. One by one, she would give him a list of local places of worship she wanted to visit. Most unusual, thought the taxi driver, but certainly a change from ferrying his usually inebriated clientele around Tamworth on a Saturday night. In addition to the itinerary and the way the lady was dressed, there was also something quite different about this passenger. He glanced in the rearview mirror several times, and aside from the pale complexion and the liberal dose of rouge on the cheeks and the lips, it was the eyes which perplexed him. They were just dark and apparently lifeless, just like black holes sucking in all this surrounding light. The first stop was St. John the Baptist, near the town centre. followed by St Chad's Church in Hopworth, St Leonard's Church in Wigington, the Spittal Chapel of St James on the Ashby Road, followed by the Abbey Church in Polesworth. At each location, the lady exited the cab and entered the churchyard, bowed her head in reverence, and by the movement of her lips, the driver assumed she was praying. Despite his increase in fatigue, the driver did notice something else unusual. On such a cold night, it would be expected that his mysterious passenger was exhaling her warm breath. It should be condensing into a cloudy mist. He observed no such thing from this lady. Despite the meter accruing a sizable sum of money, the lady requested one last stop, Lichfield Cathedral. En route to the cathedral, the driver noticed that the once dark and lifeless eyes had given way to a shimmering glaze as the bright moonlight penetrated the taxi window. She was crying. On arriving at Lichfield Cathedral, his passenger became more animated as she approached the cathedral entrance. She fell down to her knees with her arms held aloft as though she was beckoning the statues of the apostles to come to life and come down from their lofty perch to comfort her. Though her words were indistinguishable, her tone was clearly that of sorrow and agony. Her cries finally ceased, and she asked to be returned to Tamworth. The assembly rooms would be okay. Upon arrival, the meter showed a total of £150. However, before he could hold out his hand for the cash, the lady was presenting the driver with a ring. Normally it would be his impulse to get angry or even call the police if a passenger could not pay. On this occasion, a blend of exhaustion and compassion made him refrain from doing so. In any case, this was clearly no Christmas cracker ring. It might be worth more than the fare. Before letting go of the ring, the lady urged him to go to an address in Tamworth, where the ring would be exchanged for the fare in cash. This was not a suggestion. The lady was in fact pleading with him to do so. He nodded in agreement, and the lady exited the taxi and headed in the direction of St Editha's Church. Disappointed and curious, the driver returned home. After breakfast the next day, the driver decided that he would go to the address he was given to see if indeed he could cash in the ring he'd been promised. Upon arriving at the house, he took a deep breath and pressed the doorbell. Eventually, a youngish-looking man possibly in his mid-30s, opened the door. With an element of hesitation, he presented the ring. The effect was not instantaneous, but seconds later the young man fell to his knees, grasping and kissing the ring. He recognized it straight away. It was a family heirloom that had been passed down to his mother, who had died several years ago. The ring was so precious to her, he had instructed the undertakers that this ring should be buried along with her body. How was this here? Holding on to the driver, with his legs weakened by shock and overwhelming sadness, he zigzagged his way over to the sofa and told the driver everything. As a child, he was very sick. Some thought terminally ill. However, his mother stayed by his side day and night, praying to God that should her son recover, she would offer her prayers and thanksgiving at 6 local places of worship. Indeed, the son did recover significantly and was still nursed and cared for by his mother. By the time the son's health had improved to the level he could look after himself, his mother too became very ill. It was on her deathbed that she repeated her thanks to God for her son's life and was repentant for never having kept her promise in life, but promised that she would return and do so in death. The end.
The Victorian Spirit. A little girl plays alone in her bedroom, immersed in the world of fantasy. She loves to draw scenes of the canal side and Victorian bridges arch over the busy waterways. She listened to the thud of horses' hooves and the rasp of ropes pulling the working canal boats. Timber and coal being carried aboard to the inner city areas. Her spirit belongs to those days gone by, when the old Victorian canal side house was a thriving home for the mining community. Her father, coming home, covered from head to foot in coal dust. Nothing that Wright's coal tar soap couldn't remove. Man constantly washing with baking soda and talcum powder, vinegar and detergent, also used to remove the soot and the coal dust. The wind would help to blow it away. A window slams shut, and with a startled jolt, the little girl is suddenly drawn back to the present day era. The air is thin. There is a chill in the breeze. The ice-cold room harbours no warmth. She can see her breath in the vapours of the air. Her heart beats fast, and she remembers that it is All Hallows Eve, dedicated to remembering the dead. She clings to her bed sheets pulled over her head and feels a pressure on her legs, as if someone's sitting on the edge of the bed. She hears the sweet tones of a spirit child singing. I know an angel watches over me. God bless the angels and God bless me. The dulcet tones hang in the air, touching her heartstrings, lifting her soul. She feels the pressure release from her legs and the bed springs pop. Then silence. Should she remove the bed sheets, wrapped tightly around her head? Whilst thinking, her eyelids grow heavy and she falls into a deep sleep. The dream of the moon and stars in her angelic slumberland. Was this a dream? Or was it a spirit drawing near to lift her mystical dreamscape? Who knows?
What lies beneath? It was while Amy fumbled for her car keys that she sensed she was being watched. The downy hair on the back of her neck prickled slightly and her skin became clammy. In the pit of her belly her gut lurched and she scanned the car park, tension knotting her stomach. There it was again, the snap of twigs being broken underfoot, the rustle of decaying leaves. She spun round, certain that the sound was coming from behind her. No one there. She flopped into a crumpled heap behind the steering wheel and turning the ignition, she felt the panic start to ebb away. Nevertheless, she activated the central locking. She put the radio on for company. It was getting dark and miserly rain swirled in the beam of the headlights. The 6 o'clock news came on the radio. A third body has been found in the River Anker near Tamworth. Police are following several lines of inquiry, but have not released any details yet. They have asked members of the public to stay away from the area and let the forensic teams do their work. If anyone has any further information, they should contact this number. Amy shuddered as she imagined a lifeless body floating, bloated, in the shallows and some poor, unsuspecting dog walker discovering it. She flicked the radio on to Classic FM, hoping for something a little bit more uplifting. The moon was low in the sky, a hazy crescent that seemed to be caught in strands of grey cloud. Amy felt an icy draught on the nape of her neck, and she turned the heater on and pulled her collar up. The fog was thicker now, and the unlit road felt strangely unfamiliar. Maybe the half-light was tricking her. She realised she had not seen another vehicle for several miles and suddenly felt very vulnerable and alone. Ahead, the road forked and a road closure sign diverted her towards an eerie, pale light. The radio cut out. The car had become icy cold, even though the heater was on full, and it was as if the fog was oozing in through the cracks. Amy drove as fast as she dared, desperately trying to regain some composure, when something gripped her shoulder. She heard a low, gasping breath behind her. Slowly, she checked the rearview mirror. She screamed in horror, slammed her foot to the floor. The car screeched and whined as it lurched off the road and slithered to a halt in the shallow ditch. Silence. Dazed but unhurt, Amy stared transfixed at the reflection in the mirror. A waxen face, long, dark hair swept up in an untidy knot, a woman, her tormented eyes drilling into Amy. Amy slowly reached up to release the woman's hand from her shoulder. Nothing there, just her own goose flesh, clammy and cold. "Help me," the woman pleaded, her voice thin and reedy. Who are you?" Amy stammered. "Justice. I want justice," the creature rasped, clasping her bony fingers to her own throat. Amy saw crimson bruises on the woman's neck, and she noticed that the head hung limply on one side. "Get out! Go to Ladybridge," the spectre demanded. "Go! They're waiting." As Amy cowered in her seat, trying to understand what was happening, the car door swung open, and soon she was being grabbed by the spectre. Pulling her trembling hand, she was compelled to follow. Faster, faster she was pulled through the tangle of gorse, her shoes slipping in the mud, low branches tangling her hair. They reached a wooden gate leading up to Ladybridge, and in the half light Amy could make out the white and blue tape of the police cordon. "Must be where they found that body," she thought to herself. "Bodies?" corrected the spirit. "Many have perished in this river, in this town, too many innocents." Suddenly, a rising clamour of voices echoed around them, a throng of shape-shifting spirits, at once separate and merged, marching towards her. Like vipers, they coiled around her, each determined for their story to be heard. "I'm Amy Allsop. I didn't kill myself. I'm not a thief." "Sarah Bell, my skin's burning. It's burning." "Help me." "Birdit's no saint. Killed me, then salved his sin by building yon chapel at Alvercut. I didn't deserve this." Them Roundheads should have swung, left my Robbie Braden for dead, and all for his tuppence purse. Amy felt the force of them as they pushed through and over each other to get closer to her. She could smell their rancid odour and feel their fingers tugging at her hair, at her clothes. Louder, louder, till the cacophony made her head spin, and she fell to the ground, gasping for air. Slowly, the ghostly crowd shrank back, melting into the fog, oozing into stone, creeping back towards the castle. Only the figure that had led Amy to Ladybridge remained. "Who are you?" Amy asked. "My name is Elizabeth Amos, Lizzie. I swung for 10 long minutes before I died. Poisoned my husband, paid the price," the spectre replied. And for the first time, Amy noticed the noose around Lizzie's neck. "But he beat me. He treated me worse than a dog. For years, I couldn't take no more." "But I don't understand. Who are they? What do you all want from me?" Amy asked. "We are restless souls, unable to pass over, long dead, and by the hands of those that did not pay for their crimes. We seek justice. It is time. Now is the time." Amy closed her eyes for a moment, her mind spinning and her heart racing. Silence again. When she looked up, she was sitting in her car, the engine humming and the late news bulletin playing on the radio. "Another body has been found near Ladybridge in Tamworth. Police are appealing for witnesses," the announcer said. Then the transmission was interrupted by loud crackling static and Lizzie's rasping voice. "Help us! Help us! Help us!"
My castle is here. This is good. Not sure about food though. For some reason, the pheasant on the table in the dining hall, all upstairs, and the meat in the kitchen is made out of wax or plasticine or something. Back in my day, the meat was real. Oh well, at least there are still pigeons for me to hunt. And the humans aren't disrupting my sleep with pike and shot. Even tour groups are less noisy than a siege. Good thing they kept my castle up. In the beginning it was a simple place. Wood, where there is now stone. And in a way much like any other. a colonial outpost of the Normans, one of many hubs the knights would ride from in a chain that would stretch from Spain to Scotland. They never did kill Tamworth's Saxon spirit, though. Not all of it was war. Ethelfleed and the Danelaw, king and parliament, these struggles are but brief moments in mine castle's time. For as the Norman hold passed through time, the garrison became a home. Marmion to cook, families made it their home. But it's my home, really. But each of them added new places for me to sleep and to hunt, and perhaps I'll grab one of those pigeons. The White Lady and the Black Lady are said to haunt the castle. Looking for a lost love, perhaps? Well, there are many stories to tell. A visit by James VI in the 17th century, a dissatisfied wife in the 18th, daughters being educated in the 19th. Even if girls do classes, cats don't. So much more than men in metal. Respite, love, company, favour, everyone looking for something. Good thing the Victorians added plumbing, else there'd be other unpleasant things to look out for. And through it all, I hunt the pigeons. But who am I? I am Nyawen, the cat of the castle. 1,000 years I have seen, and here's to another 1,000. All I ask is that you look after my castle. It can't look after itself.
Here I stand at the foot of the gallows. They think they have done with me, and that this is my end. They are wrong. I await my final judgment. Accused of murder, I look out at the thousands of spectators that have come to watch me die. I stand strong and proud. I have no wish to spill ill of what I've done and what I face. Those that have judged me call it murder. I call it justice. I so gladly go and depart from this world and my wretched life. As my judges and jury watch on, they have no real idea what went on. They do not know what I went through, but I do, and I will tell you my truth. I confess my sins to Almighty God as I stand to wait my death. I was born Mary DuPont in the year of our Lord 1818 to a well-off family. I wanted nothing and was brought up to become a lady fit enough for the marriage market as soon as I came of age. When time came, I was introduced to Lord Fitzwilliam Rudolph, and it was proclaimed that I would be wed. The match was well suited, and it was found that I was falling fast in love with him. He had the air of a gentleman, a husband that any woman of my status would envy, and soon enough we were wed. I bore him a daughter and 2 sons. Again, I wanted for nothing. We lived in high society, envy to all who knew us. I thought we lived in true happiness. I was wrong. Tragedy struck when my my youngest son, John, contracted scarlet fever and died. Shortly after, my oldest, Fitzwilliam Jr., contracted the deadly disease and died. I cannot tell you how distraught I was. There was no words to describe how I felt. I lost 2 sons within 2 months of each other. My husband's character changed overnight. His true colours came out. I found out about his squandering of family money. He was drinking all hours of the night and gambling. He wasted away every single penny we had, so much so that everything we owned had to be sold, and we became impoverished. The shock of it all drove me to become withdrawn from myself. I never left the flea-infested hovel of the one room that was had to call home. No longer was I the well-to-do lady I was brought up to be. Fitzwilliam was no longer the handsome man I was so in awe of. All day and all night he wasted his life, and whatever little money came in, which wasn't a lot, he spent on women of ill repute. When he was at home, he would beat me. I could take the beatings and the constant slurs, "You bitch, you good-for-nothing whore." I could take it all that. The one thing I could not stand was what he did to my precious Sophie. The one child I had left. Her beauty was like no other. Her long blonde ringlets and her bright blue eyes. Oh, I see them now as I stand upon the scaffold. I want better for her, but I know I could never give her the life she truly deserved. Now it seems funny, as I stand to wait my death, that even after I've done, I cannot give her the life that, but at least Fitzwilliam can harm no one else. My husband destroyed her beautiful soul. He was beating our daughter. Whatever he did to me was fine, but there was no way I would stand for him to harm our only child, my sweet, sweet Sophie. On catching him, I pulled him off her, and in his drunken state he staggered out. I could not allow him to do it again. Something had to be done. There was no way I could go to the justices, as it would be my word against his. I had no evidence other than my own eyes. I had to take justice into my own hands. I prepared a plan of action and required some arsenic. Each day, little by little, meal by meal, I added small doses into his food, and day by day, I watched the vile man I called husband sicken. First the nausea took hold, then he was bedridden at death's door. His eyes were blank and dark. He was dying. I was trapped between morality and justice. I knew deep down what I was doing was wrong, but the thought of my husband's slimy hands all over my daughter urged me to continue to take justice into my own hands. The more I fed him the poison, the better it made me feel. I did not care if I was discovered. My only care was for the justice to be upheld. My husband finally died on the 15th of July, 1849. His last breath was harsh. His body contorted into violent spasms. It was a horror to look on if I were anyone else. I had no feeling for the lifeless carcass that was once my husband. My sweet Sophie was free, now free, from the vileness, and so was I. A doctor came to pronounce him dead. The verdict was natural causes, but then came talk of the town. Suspicion followed me everywhere. Like a shadow I could not shake. That was the cause. That I was the cause of his death. Which is true, but no one was supposed to know. That I did everything I could to cover up my crime. I scrubbed my house from top to bottom, rid myself of the soup, but still, because of the suspicion, the police were called. But my downfall came when I left a small bottle of arsenic out. How could I forget that? I cursed myself for such a foolery. I had no cause to deny the fact that I took his life. My defence was that I did it on the defence of mine and my daughter's life. But it went on deaf ears. I was found guilty of murder. As I stand upon the scaffold, I am thankful for what my sweet, sweet, safe girl is not here to witness what I am willing to sacrifice for her. I am thankful that my sister Edie and her husband Joseph has taken in my Sophie and out into the countryside away from this moment. My time has come to an end. In a matter of moments I will take a gallows dance, ascend the steps, a rope placed around my neck. its rough fibres scratching at my throat. The executioner, pulling my arms around my back, thrusting them up. There will be no hood or blindfold for me. The crowd is hungry for blood. They have a delight on their faces, but I will not cry. I will not show them anything but a dignity of a lady. The crowd jeer as the noose tightens. I cannot breathe. I feel the weight beneath my feet as the trapdoor rocks below. The gallows dancer waits. Soon my lifeless body will swing from side to side upon the rope. My body will contort in a dance of death. 6 others have already took the gallows dance and swing below me now. I am ready to depart from this existence. I do not fear death. As the executionist takes hold of the lever, the dancer waits. If I could redo my life, I would have done no cause to do it again. I would do everything exactly as I have done it before. Do not mourn my passing as I stand at the foot of the gallows. My story will live on. My death is not in vain. As I depart from this life, I can only speak, ask and pray that my Sophie will finally have the life she deserves, a life I can only dream of giving her. My last thoughts are of her. Now I take my leave to dance the final dance, the gallows dance.
It was the morning after Halloween. I put on my coat and went for a walk in the woods. Birds warned each other of my presence. The only other sound came from the dead leaves, scrunching beneath my feet. There was a faint smell of smoke, but I was unable to find any evidence of a smouldering fire or spent fireworks. Everywhere was calm, but I felt uneasy. I had the feeling I was being watched. As I walked back towards home, I heard a rustling behind me. I turned quickly. Nothing. I walked on, my antennae on full alert. I spun round again. Was that a shadow, or was it my imagination? There it was again, darting behind a tree. I nervously approached the tree. Nothing. I picked up a stick and held it like a weapon. I called, "Come on out! Show yourself!" No response. Had I imagined it? Perhaps I'd imagined everything. I hurried home. As I turned the key in the door, I heard a meow behind me and saw a beautiful black cat. Where have you come from? Was that you following me? You scared me. I picked her up, but she wriggled free. From that day on, she never left my side. I named her Shadow. She was a strange cat. She refused to eat cat food and preferred to eat the same food as me. She loved McDonald's and chocolate cake. When I watched the television, she sat upright next to me. I never saw her curl up like cats do. Every night she would sit at the window and watch the sky. In the morning she would sleep on my bed. The following Halloween, Shadow became agitated and stalked up and down, meowing loudly by the front door. What's wrong? Don't you like Halloween either? I tried to stroke her, but she arched her back and hissed at me. I put a piece of chocolate cake on her plate. That should do the trick. I thought, but she started yowling and hissing. You can't go outside, it's dark. You'll get lost, I said. Perhaps my anxiety was rubbing off on her. Nevertheless, I still went through my usual Halloween routine. I turned on the lights, closed the curtains, turned up the volume on the radio, and bolted the doors. We were safe. I panicked. She'd gone. "Where are you?" I called. I looked in all of her favourite places, on the bed, under it, on the settee, under the radiator. My legs went like jelly. The cat flap. She'd always refused to use it, instead preferring to use the front door. I pulled on my boots and grabbed my coat. The night was eerily calm. The waning moon cast a silver glow. The silence was deafening. I called, "Shadow, where are you?" I heard meowing coming from above me. I looked up and saw a broomstick gliding silently in the sky. Steered by a hunched-up witch wearing a large hat, riding pillion was Shadow. She waved at me as I stood rooted to the spot. I quickly recovered and ran, following them towards the woods. Sparks flew as the broomstick started to descend. There was that strange smell again. I pulled my coat over my nose, but my eyes were stinging. Then I saw them dancing around a cauldron, which was hanging over a bonfire. It had blue and green sparks coming from it. The witch dismounted her broomstick and joined the other four. They surrounded Shadow as they danced and chanted. It sounded like an ancient language. I was mesmerised. Their chanting got faster. I could feel myself getting light-headed as I swayed to their rhythmical voices. They pointed their fingers with talon-like nails. At Shadow, their chanting changed. "Obey your mother! Obey your mother!" Shadow started making strange noises. I rushed forward. Her glossy fur changed to pale skin, which took on a greenish glow as she morphed into a beautiful young witch. She ran with her arms outstretched to her mother, who remonstrated that perhaps now she would stop complaining about being a witch. I suddenly felt exposed, naked. 6 pairs of hypnotic bright green eyes stared at me. I felt a strange tingling sensation. My skin started to itch and my tongue felt rough. As I crept away, no one stopped me. My back ached, so I got on all fours. I followed her home. She turned and said, "Where have you come from? Have you been following me?" Her voice was so familiar. As she knelt down and stroked me, I looked into her hypnotic, bright green eyes. The end.
But that was normal for a Saturday. Sue gave a swift look around and turned to her companion. "Grab us a table, Pauline, whilst I get us a pot of tea. We can order later." Without waiting for an acknowledgement, she turned to join the queue. "Strumpet!" The voice, full of venom, came from behind her. Startled, Sue turned round to look into Pauline's vacuous face. There was nobody else there. "Did you say something?" "I said crumpet. I love a crumpet, smothered in butter. If they've got one, I'll have one with my tea." "Look, that couple over there's moving. We can sit there." Pauline moved towards the table in the corner, and as soon as it was vacant, sat down and put her handbag on the other seat. Sue mentally shook herself. She was sure that the word had been strumpet. She must get her hearing tested. As she joined the queue, she glanced around the cafe. There were several people she recognised, and she nodded her head in acknowledgement to their waits. Then she looked over towards the board and the far wall. The board was the brainchild of the manager. Although the cafe was open to everyone, its main clientele were pensioners enticed by the inexpensive home-cooked food. You couldn't cook it yourself for the price. It became a meeting place for the elderly in the neighbourhood. And as their main topic of conversations were death and ailments, preferably their own, Mrs. Simpson, the owner, had installed a large pinboard board on one of the walls with her regulars' names written on it. When someone died, a white lily was placed against their name. Taken to hospital, they had received a H and the name of the hospital. And if they went into a nursing home, the symbol of a bed. Despite initial misgivings, the board had become the internet of information for the regulars. They knew that if they went to hospital, nursing home or hospice, they would be certain of a constant stream of visitors. And that if they died, there would be mourners at their funeral. For some without close family, this was very important. Sue observed that a white lily had been placed against Amy Noakes's name. I wonder how her husband is coping, she thought. I must go round and see if I can comfort him. She also noticed that Gary Rogers was in the local hospital. She could visit him on Friday. She wasn't interested in the women. Pauline took up enough of her time. How Eric had put up with her witterings, she did not know. No wonder he'd found consolation elsewhere. She smiled as she mentally conjured up his image. There were no crumpets, so Sue paid for the tea and manoeuvred her way back to the table where Pauline had settled herself. She was staring vacantly ahead, mouth slightly open, a spittle of dribble coming down her chin. Sue stifled her irritation and nodded towards the board. I see Amy's dead. Yes, replied Pauline, but in an unusually disinterested voice. I'll expect you'll be round there offering comfort. At least you've got the decency this time to wait until she's gone. I think I'll have the liver today. It helps my constipation, you know. Shall I be mother? She drew the 2 cups towards her and started pouring out the tea. Sue stared sharply at Pauline. Woolly-minded Pauline, who had come out with an accusation? Or had she? Maybe guilt was making her read too much into the comment. Not that guilt had bothered her before. Age must have been catching up with her. She definitely should slow down. Maybe give Gary Rogers' hospital visit a miss. Excuse me? The voice changed from polite stranger to local accent as the speaker recognised Sue. Oh, it's you! How are you doing? It's been ages since we met. Bella from the local bowling club stood before them. I was going to ask if I could borrow a chair so I could sit with my friends over there. She vaguely waved in the direction of the door. Good to see you. Yes, of course, replied Sue, glad of the diversion. Bella placed her hand on the chair, but didn't move it. Instead, she sat down and, leaning forward, she placed her hand over Sue's and whispered, I was so sorry when I heard the news. I know that you two were close. What's the matter with everyone today, thought Sue. Either I'm going mad or these old biddies have finally succumbed to drink and dementia. Do you mean Amy? She replied. We've been expecting it for some time. Pauline butted into the conversation. Sorry, I must go to the toilet. That tea's gone straight through me. She heaved herself to the feet, using the table for support, and shuffled across the floor at surprising speed. Bella continued, as though the interruption had not occurred. No, I meant your friend Pauline. It was such a shock when we heard she died. Pauline? Pauline's fine. She was sitting here a minute ago. Didn't you see her? Bella looked puzzled, then concerned. Oh, I'm so sorry. Grief can do that to you. It's often hard to accept that we will never see a loved one again. We were just thinking that's me what happened to Pauline, going through her husband's things and realising he wasn't there anymore. No, you've got it wrong. My Pauline is alive, and if you want to wait a few minutes, she'll be back from the toilet. Oh, I'm so sorry. Whatever must you think of me? Nice to see you looking so well. And Bella scuttled away, clutching the chair to her. When she reached her table, she started talking excitedly to her companions, who looked over to Sue, and then at the board. Sue looked up. There against Pauline's name was a white lily. It's certainly not been there when they came in. Someone's playing games, she thought, and felt a deep anger rising up. The anger was still there when Pauline came back. "Look, Pauline, look at the board. Some spiteful scumbag has put a white lily against your name." "Yes," replied Pauline. "That's right. I died 3 days ago. But I didn't want to cancel our Saturday get-together. Shall we order now?" "What are you talking about? You're not dead." "Oh, I am. I should know. I was a bit upset at the time, especially when I came across the letters you'd sent my Eric. I took a few extra tablets, the ones that Dr. Freeman gave me to help me sleep. Well, they certainly worked. I'm okay now, and it's nice to know what's really going on. I didn't fancy meeting up with Eric again, though. Maybe later? And I realised that I would miss out on our weekly trips to the shops and the cafe, so I decided I'd carry on doing that for a while. Please myself for a change. So I'll meet you every Saturday at the bus stop at 11. Try not to be late. You wouldn't like me to come looking for you?"
You all know Sir Robert Peel, MP for Tamworth. But did you know, when younger, he was MP for Cashel, County Tipperary in Ireland? I want to transport you across the sea to the island of his time, the time of the Great Famine. You will hear screams of, "You did nothing to save us, our potato crops failed, you stole our corn to feed others." Death came slowly and painfully. Against this background, like that of a banshee, one cry could be heard above all others. "I will haunt you forever, Sir Thomas Palmer, aristocrat, cruel overlord, evictor of the poor, Irish scum you called us." This cry came from Roisin, a real beauty, but also a kind and unassuming woman, much loved by her community. Michael, who some would describe as rather a simpleton, adored her. She was so kind to him. However, she was abused by Sir Thomas Palmer, who had visited her several times, forcing himself upon her and handing out a meagre amount of food in return. As on other occasions, she heard the thunder of hooves, screeching to a halt on the barren earth, her children scattered with no father to protect them. He stood before her, his ugly, leering face and large frame casting a shadow. She knew what to expect, but this time she thought, no more. With a huge effort, and weak with hunger, she made a grab for a knife, but was not fast enough. He wrenched it from her. There was a scream, followed by a deathly moan. He threw her limp body onto the sack bed on the floor. Ignoring his blood-spattered shirt, he dusted himself down and left. Her death shocked the whole community. People who were used to acts of barbarism, but this was something else. It was Michael who ventured into the cottage and was horrified at what he saw. She was buried in a shallow communal grave, a result of so many dying at once, but Roisin would not rest in peace that death normally brings. Thomas Palmer gave little thought to what he had done, until one particularly warm night he became very anxious and restless. There was a sudden stirring within the room. He looked to the end of the bed, opened his mouth to scream, but no sound came out. She was there, a hazy figure sitting calmly on the end of his bed, her green eyes glowing in the dark. He could see the outline of a bandage around her neck, covered with congealed blood. She made a gesture across her throat, a stark warning to him. He was shaking now and went for a large drink. Sleep deprivation followed for many nights, wearing him down. His wife, Lady Jane, noticed how agitated he had become and he was even more morose. Had he been spurned by some woman? She was used to his dalliances over the years, yet he did love her more than anyone or anything. He couldn't do without her. Riding back from friends in the dim evening light, a ghostly figure crossed her path. Sensing this, the horse reared. She was thrown, neck broken. The cries of the banshee heard once more. Hearing this devastating news, Sir Thomas began a rapid decline, drinking, hallucinating, wandering at night. His life became a nightmare. He saw demons, faces of those he had punished, evicted, left to die, but always above others he saw the face of Rasheen. One night he saw her again, as beautiful as the first night he had ever set eyes on her, and she beckoned him towards the grain shed, normally securely locked. She seemed to pass through the door. He followed. From nowhere, a small group of villagers arrived. They seemed almost driven by a force that they had yet to understand. They were hungry and defeated people. They'd nothing to lose. There he was, the vile, intoxicated individual who had made their lives hell. Michael heard a whispering, "Go for it, go for it. Now is your chance to avenge Rasheen." And the normally gentle, harmless Michael grabbed a knife and coolly and clinically cut the throat of the evil man. In his last moments of torment, it wasn't Rasheen who Thomas saw, but demons beckoning him, leading him, and then oblivion. It was her final retribution. Heart-stopping violence turned into peaceful silence. She was at rest. The small group of villagers took what they wanted in the way of food and calmly walked away as Sir Thomas had done when he had murdered Rasheen.
Halloween at Tamworth Castle. My twin brother peered around my bedroom door. "Don't let those girls upset you, sis. You need to teach them a lesson." "How can I do that? There's too many of them." "Trust me, I've got a plan. It's brilliant." Christopher sat on my bed and he went through the plan again with me. We were all set for Halloween. The castle was silhouetted and its huge leaded windows looked ethereal in the glow of the full moon. Its flag hung limp in the still night air. It was eerily quiet. I looked anxiously around me. Then I spotted them. The little clique huddled together by the gate. "I didn't think you'd come." Connie was slouching with her hands in her pockets. "Why would you think that? It was me who arranged it." She got right in my face and sneered. "Because you're a scaredy cat, Joe Brown." Their small gathering had one thing in common: bravado. I was usually the butt of their jokes, practical jokes. In fact, I was the joke. The gate leading up to the castle had a chain wrapped around it and was secured with a huge padlock. Connie's brother Brian went first. His long legs easily cleared the gate. One by one they helped each other over the gate, but no one helped me. The path leading to the castle was steep. The huge black doors to the courtyard were locked. They sat with their backs to it. I sat alone on the steps. We watched the lights twinkling in the distance. "What now?" whispered Annie. "We wait." "Wait for what, moron?" "The bewitching hour. That's when the ghosts come." "You don't know that," Frida snapped. I smiled to myself. Brian passed a bottle of vodka around and they shared a joint. As usual, I was excluded. I would have declined anyway. They were becoming boisterous, but the mood changed when St Edith's clock started to chime. The tension was palpable as we all stood and counted 12, each bong reverberating in the silence. A sudden gust of wind blew and a large black door swung open. The empty vodka bottle rolled across the ground and the flurry of litter swirled in the air. I calmly looked around as the others screamed. "Let's go in," I called. The group protested. "We're not going in there." "I'm off." "You're joking." "You're chickens, the lot of you," I shouted. "Come on." They reluctantly followed me into the dark courtyard. I was the only one who brought a torch. They followed the beam as I led them into what used to be the dungeon. A grey mist appeared in the corner and started to morph into a human shape. My torch flickered and died. The screams from the others were deafening. I stood and watched as the entity floated over them. They ran to the courtyard doors in blind panic, but it barred their way. It started to emit a strange purple glow and pointed a large finger at Connie, the leader of the group. She hid behind the others. The entity took on a wolf-like appearance and snarled its teeth. Its hypnotic eyes turned a fluorescent yellow, illuminating the courtyard. We shielded our eyes from its glare and jumped as the doors to the courtyard slammed shut. The screams were deafening. The others were banging on the door and screaming, "Let me out! Help!" I stood in front of them. "Stop yelling. You've only got to ask nicely." He's looking at me," Connie stammered. "Perhaps he doesn't like bullies, Connie. You need to be kinder. In fact, you all do." I looked upwards and spoke out in a polite but firm voice. "Please, will you let us out now? I think my friends have had enough." The gate swung open and then slammed behind us with a loud bang. I almost got knocked over by the stampede. The following day at school, I heard my classmates whispering, "Do you think she's a witch? How did she know it was going to be there? You've got to admit that she's got more guts than any of us." They stopped when they saw me. They had a reverential tone whenever they spoke to me from then on. We placed flowers on the grave. It was our 15th birthday. I whispered, "Thank you. Your plan worked." I looked up and saw Christopher standing behind the headstone that read, "Christopher Brown, loving son, brother." He wore a t-shirt that said, "I am the clever twin." He grinned and said, "Happy birthday, sis," then floated away on the breeze.
Grandma was in the lounge and didn't hear as the front door was down the passage. But Cuddles, her dog, heard the noise and started to bark. Slowly made her way to the door and opened it. A man stood there. "Charlie, have you got leave? You only joined the RAF 3 months ago. Goodness, why are you all wet? There's no rain." A small whine came from Cuddles. She looked down at him as he moved closer to her. Looking up again to kiss her son, she found there was no one there. Only a small pool of water where he had stood. The telegram came 2 days later. It read, son lost at sea in the Mediterranean on a troop ship. We were all lost in sorrow and wonder. That's enough.
Something stirs beneath the bodies. Carefully I move one, exposing a child. 4, 5. Large eyes, wide with terror. I raise my gun and fire. The head separates from the body, transformed from living flesh into powdered bone and bloody tissue. It hangs momentarily in the shimmering heat before settling on the field. I wake with the start. It's a dream. One of those stupid dreams. A memory. Get on with your life. I know what triggered it. This effing tribunal set up by do-gooders, showing horror at things they know nothing about. Were they there in the blazing heat and the constant stir of gunfire, fighting on an enemy we could not see, but who was all around us? And those poor innocent villagers, they were part of it, turning a blind eye to booby traps hidden in their fields, concealing and feeding their fathers, brothers, sons. All of them were contaminated, vermin that needed to be eliminated before they multiplied and overwhelmed us. Our orders were simple: seek out and destroy. And that is what we did. Not all of us. Some held back. Others started but couldn't finish the job. And a few even tried to rescue the poor women and children, especially when it became apparent that no actual enemy, soldiers, were there. Me? I followed orders. Burn, kill, destroy. And in a way, it was a release. At last, something concrete to focus upon. Something to assuage my anger and grief at the death of James, my right-hand man, blown to pieces by a mine planted by one of these bastards. Calm down. You'll be all right. The judge will see that I was justified, following orders. I am living a respectable life. I pay taxes. I'm married. Have a child. My son. I will raise him correctly. If he follows my instructions, he will be safe. I relax thinking of him and move towards his bedroom. He is asleep. Long lashes over rounded cheeks. My fingers reach out to touch him, and he wakes. Large eyes look into me, filled with fear.
Are you sitting comfortably? Are you?
Yes.
Good, good. Then we will begin the story of Erica's trip to room 17. The receptionist welcomed me over. Hello, you must be our new arrival. I was a little taken aback. No worries, we're used to sudden arrivals. Oh, a murder. We don't usually get those. Now, let me see. Erica, Michelle Fallon, nurse and expectant mum. Ah, 32, having a boy I see. Then interjected, the doctor said a girl. The receptionist smiled. Well, people see only appearances while God sees the heart. No matter, you'll have plenty of time to... Hang on. The receptionist looked through the papers. Says here you have some unfinished business. I was about to cry. I mean, yes. Sarah and I were going for a rough patch. Perhaps stressing over becoming mums for the first time. But perhaps not. I know she's been saying I've never made time for her, but I kept putting the job first. But she's a PCSO. Surely she'd understand more than most. And I need to take Fluffles to the vet. Our cat needs her vaccines. The receptionist then directed my attention to the screen. There I was, Erica Michelle Fallon. Condition, dead. Suspected poisoning. The receptionist then spoke. I guess you'll need to go to room 17. That's the haunting department. They'll be able to help you. I headed down the corridor and found room 17. They opened it before I could knock. Erica, step right in. And I walked in and they sat me down. So, Erica, I understand you've been recommended for a haunting. So, could you describe in your own words what your unfinished business was? I took a deep breath. Well, you see, Sarah and I have had a bit of a difficult time of it. I mean, we're married and not wanting to break up, but we plan to have a baby. It's just, I sighed. Sarah started to feel I was putting being a nurse above our relationship. I mean, I don't get her problem. She's a PCSO. It's not like she doesn't have long shifts. And I then started to cry and swearing a bit too much. It was a weight problem. It made me uncomfortable being intimate. They offered me a tissue. You're unhappy about her gaining weight? I cried a bit more. No, I was. I felt awkward, getting wobbly, starting to sag, and in the bedroom. They assured me they didn't need the details. Body discomfort is perfectly normal. Is there a reason why you didn't tell Sarah? I cried a little more. I just felt like she was going off me. Like when I suggested Netflix and chill, we'd actually relax and watch Netflix. I had hoped the extra shifts would get me more active and perhaps she'd like me again. They noted all this down. Erica, this is all very informative and I hope you don't mind if we have a quick look in on Sarah. I signed the data permission release form and they prepared a TV in the corner. Now what happens next? You will not see that tonight, but I foresee in the future there will be a book. It will be in the castle shop at a reasonable price, where you will find what happens next. And you will find many other adventures that have not been put in this evening. So I bid thee farewell as you proceed on your evening today. So, that was fun, wasn't it? I mean, I'm not sure about the one who came dressed up in all them costumes, like, you know the one. The one who did that performance and the thing with the chainmail, and then the chainmail and cat ears, then that sort of that pseudo-doctor's outfit. Well, whether you like the spooky season or not, it was lovely having you here.